Hello and welcome to the 5th episode to this guide to Formula 1. In this episode, I'll be talking about the strategy in F1, both in qualifying and in the race. If you haven't seen the previous episode about the tracks, go check that out as well so that you can understand this episode. The strategy in F1 is one of the more complicated aspects of the sport, especially because it's quite different to different sports and because it's very variable. So it changes very quickly, very unexpectedly as well, and it's heavily dependent on the circumstances. So the weather, the track, the tires, and much more. Strategy is trying to make the best decisions in a race weekend, trying to call the pit stops, the tire choices, when to go out on track for qualifying, and much more. So let's start off with the qualifying strategy. So the teams complete advanced data simulations ahead of time. They have a team of about 30 to 40 people working back at the base of the team, and they complete data simulations based off the telemetry of the car of previous years at that track. And what they do, they try to optimize these simulations for changing situations. So let's say it started to rain. Let's say if you lose a position at the start or you gain a position. How does this change the strategy? How might this change the lap in which you complete your pit stop? And there's different types of strategy. But focusing on qualifying, they complete specific data analysis for qualifying, trying to find out when is the best time to get out on the track, when is the track at the optimum temperature to complete your lap and get the fastest lap possible to start the race in the best possible place. So part of this decision making is which tire are you starting on. So the Formula 1 teams at the moment, they have had the choice between 5 different tires. There's a soft tire. This one is fastest but also wears out quickest. There's a medium tire. This has medium speed and medium degradation. And the hard tire, which is slowest but also degrades slowest. So this means that you can have different strategies in qualifying. Now generally, as you want to put in the fastest lap, most teams will opt for the soft tire so that they can ensure to get as far into qualifying as possible, into Q2 or even Q1. However, some teams such as Mercedes and Red Bull are sometimes fast enough to consider trying out the medium tire. Now what this does, if you make it to Q2, you have to start the race on whichever tire you run in Q2. So let's say Lewis Hamilton completes Q2 on a soft tire. This means he has to start the race on that exact soft tire which he did that run with. Now, let's say in the race you plan to have a strategy where you start on a medium tire because your opponents are on a soft tire, so meaning you can extend your stint, the time that you are on that tire, which allows you that once your opponents pit, you can try to gain as much distance from them as possible. So let's say that's your strategy. Well, then what you can do is if you're fast enough, in Q2 you try to make a lap with a medium tire, and you just try to ensure that you make it to Q1. And then if you make it to Q1, you try to put on the fastest lap with the soft tire, but this will mean that in the race you start with that medium tire, which might benefit your strategy. Qualifying on a hard tire is nearly impossible. So the other 2 tires which I didn't mention are the intermediate and the wet tires. So the intermediate is for semi-wet conditions, and the full wet tires, they're very slow. They're a lot slower than the other slick tires. But if necessary, then you will have to use them because they have much more grip in the rain. So on Friday, the practice allows you to optimize your strategy for Saturday's qualifying. And then on Saturday morning, you can test your new data analysis and your new data renderings. So in qualifying, it's all about the temperatures in the tires and when you start the lap. So there's an optimum tire temperature at which the tires have most grip and are fastest. But what's important is, let's say you and your team want to get first and second position. What you might do is try to send your cars out at the right time so that you can take the slipstream of another car. So what is a slipstream? Well, basically, if you're very close to the car ahead of you on a straight, this reduces the amount of drag as the car ahead of you is basically making space in the air for you to pass through. However, in corners, being behind someone can reduce downforce as there's less air traveling straight over the bodywork, which has been made to generate downforce. So what this means, if you can benefit from the slipstream, you might be able to gain some extra speed in the straight while avoiding it in the corners. And it's these small margins which can make the difference on a qualifying session. So moving on to the race day. So now you've qualified in first, also known as pole position, and now you have to choose your strategy for the race. Well, this is equally as important, as a good qualifying strategy might get you into first, but if you don't continue like that in the race, you might end up in 10th. So what is a safety car? Well, the safety car is another Mercedes AMG car who, in a case of a severe crash, comes out onto the track, and then the other F1 drivers have to follow him. He keeps a steady pace and avoids the debris on the track, and then the other drivers follow him along until the track is clear. So it's important to consider a safety car, because if there's a safety car, everyone's traveling at a constant pace, and the people that were far behind might now catch up, so everyone is much closer together. So this gives you a free pit stop, as you won't lose much time during a safety car doing a pit stop. You also consider the weather, as if it were to rain, you might have to change your tires. And you also consider the engine modes. When are you going to push the engine to its limits? When are you going to limit it a bit? Depending on the tire compound you choose and the tire strategy, you might go for an aggressive strategy, which uses tires that degrade faster, but also give you faster lap times. This is going to mean more overtaking, as you have to pass more people because you're doing an extra pit stop. For example, going from a soft tire to a medium tire and back to a soft tire. This can work in some tracks where overtaking is possible, but in other tracks like Monaco, you might go for a safer strategy, as you know that overtaking might not even happen. A safer strategy might go from a soft tire to a hard tire. The soft tire should then give you enough speed in the starting laps of the race, while the hard tire should allow you to finish the race. And so the aggressive strategy is sometimes slower, as you have to make an extra pit stop. However, it can theoretically be faster, as you have faster lap times and therefore might be able to overtake others that have much slower lap times. Fuel also changes lap times and should be considered, as later in the race you'll have less fuel, but at the start of the race you'll have much more fuel. If you're predicting rain, the teams might opt to go for a more aggressive strategy, as if there's rain, everybody's going to have to pit to change their tires to intermediate or full wet tires. So this means that you might go for the more aggressive strategy, as everyone might be pitting anyways. And pit stops, of course, take time. Generally, they'll take around 25 seconds. However, it depends how long the pit straight is in a track, and the pit stop itself, so changing the tires and lifting the car up, that can take around 2 seconds. So that concludes the strategy of F1. I hope that you now understand how it's different to other sports and what makes it so complicated. The F1 teams have a dedicated person who's in charge of the strategy, and they're called a strategist. They travel around with the team on the track to every race, and they're in charge of a whole team of 30 to 40 people back at the base as well, who analyze the data. So the next episode will be about the logistics, and that will be the final episode wrapping up this mini-series. So thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next and final episode.